There's something beautiful about being in a good mood. Everything feels lighter. The energy flows. You think more clearly, act more confidently, and even the hard tasks seem doable. But here's the problem. Good moods are fleeting. They're not designed to last. They come and go like the weather. And if your strategy for showing up, performing, and leading depends on whether or not you're in a good mood, you're gambling with your potential. Too many people build their plans around feelings. They wait to feel motivated. Before they begin, they wait for inspiration before they take action. They wait for the stars to align before they commit. And when they don't feel it, they justify doing nothing. Because the excuse is easy. I wasn't feeling it today. Oh, but the truth is, if you only act when you feel like it, you'll never become who you're capable of being. That version of you, the one you dream about, the one you want to become, that person doesn't rise from moods. That person is built through discipline. Because discipline is not dependent on emotion. It's not seasonal. It's not conditional. Discipline is a choice, a hard choice made daily, especially on the days you'd rather not. Look around at the most consistent, high-performing people in any field, whether in business, athletics, leadership, or art, and you'll notice something. They don't always look inspired. They don't always look like they're in a good mood. In fact, many of their greatest performances came on days where they didn't feel up to it. They showed up anyway. They executed anyway, not because they felt like it, because they made a commitment that wasn't dependent on mood. And that's where greatness begins, not in the high of motivation, but in the grind of discipline. That quiet, steady rhythm of showing up, doing the work, keeping your promises, even when no one is watching, even when you're tired, even when the results aren't visible yet. That's the soil where real progress grows. We've romanticized passion and energy so much that we've forgotten what actually builds long-term results. Passion is beautiful, but it's a spark. It's not sustainable fuel. You need something deeper. You need principles. You need structure. You need the kind of strategy that doesn't collapse the moment your mood shifts. Because let's be honest, no one wakes up every single day feeling 100%. No one is immune to doubt, fatigue, or discouragement. Even the strongest people have weak moments. The difference is they don't let those moments define their behavior. When you make discipline your foundation, you give yourself a gift reliability. You can count on yourself. You stop negotiating with your goals. You stop needing a good mood to take action. You stop relying on inspiration and start relying on integrity, the kind of integrity that says, I do what I said I would do, even when it's hard. Think about it. How much time have we wasted waiting to be in the right mood? How many opportunities have slipped by because we told ourselves we'd start tomorrow when we felt better or more prepared or more excited? And how often did tomorrow never come? The difference between people who build something meaningful and people who just talk about it isn't talent, and it's not even motivation. It's discipline. It's the ability to act without needing to feel like it. It's the decision to get up, to try again, to lean in, even when the mood isn't there, especially when it's not. The irony is this: when you act with discipline, your mood eventually follows. The action creates momentum. The progress creates energy. You start to feel good, not because the mood came first, but because you honored your commitment. And that creates a different kind of confidence. Not the fleeting kind that comes from a temporary emotional high, but the deep earned kind that comes from knowing, I did what I said I would do. Discipline doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you lead with decision, not reaction. It means you build a plan that survives the storm. Because storms will come. You will have days where your motivation is zero, your energy is low, and your doubts are loud. And if your only strategy is to wait for the mood to return, you'll lose ground every time. But if your strategy is built on discipline, you'll keep showing up. You'll keep building. You'll keep moving forward, and that's what compounds. We talk a lot about habits. But at the root of every powerful habit is discipline. The decision to begin, the commitment to repeat, the willingness to endure discomfort in service of something greater. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't always feel good in the moment. But the rewards are immense because they're real. They're rooted in who you become, not just what you feel. This is why we can't let good moods be our only strategy. Moods are visitors. But discipline is a resident. It stays. It holds the line when your feelings try to negotiate you out of action. It shows up on your behalf, even when your motivation is missing. It becomes the internal system that drives you forward when everything else says pause. There's something incredibly freeing about not needing to feel perfect in order to act. You stop becoming a prisoner to your emotions. You start reclaiming your agency, and in that space you grow not just in output, but in identity. You become someone who can be counted on, someone who finishes what they start, someone who shows up even when it's hard. If you've been stuck in a cycle of starting and stopping, of waiting to feel ready, of losing momentum every time your mood dips, it's time to shift. Not everything needs to be exciting. Not everything needs to feel magical. Some of the most powerful actions are quiet, gritty, and unremarkable in the moment, but they matter, they add up. And when done consistently, they create results that no mood ever could. We don't rise to the level of our mood. We rise or fall to the level of our systems. And at the center of any strong system is the choice to prioritize discipline over emotion. That doesn't mean we ignore our feelings. It means we don't let them be the boss. We honor them, but we act from commitment. And that makes all the difference. When you look back years from now at the work you've done, the life you've built, the habits you've mastered, it won't be the good moods you remember. It'll be the hard days, the days you didn't want to, but did anyway. The days you didn't feel like it, but showed up anyway. That's where identity is forged. That's where greatness is built. Not in the mood, but in the mission. So the next time you're tempted to wait, to delay until you're in the mood, remember this, the mood may never come. But the moment is already here, and the people who change the world are the ones who act now with clarity, with discipline, with purpose, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because while mood is a spark, discipline is the fire. And fire doesn't wait to feel good to burn. We often admire successful people for their mindset, their drive, and their clarity. But if you pull back the curtain on what keeps them consistent, especially on the days when life gets messy, it's not just mindset, it's structure, it's system. Because in the real world, mindset alone isn't always enough. Motivation can fade, emotions can fluctuate, but systems stay. Systems are the quiet, unseen frameworks that keep you grounded when everything around you is shaking. They don't get applause, they don't get headlines, but they're often the reason the work gets done. There's this illusion we buy into early in our journey that successful people just wake up with superhuman discipline or endless motivation, that they're wired differently, that they have something we don't. But the reality is, most of them are not relying on mood or willpower. They've built systems that take the decision-making out of the equation, systems that carry them through days when they feel tired, unmotivated, or distracted, systems that don't care how they feel in the moment. A good system makes success boring. And that's the point. It turns chaos into rhythm. It turns wishful thinking into repeatable action. It replaces the unpredictable ups and downs of emotion with something reliable, measurable, and grounded. Because in the end, the enemy of consistency is not laziness, it's unpredictability. And the cure for that is a system. Imagine two people with the same dream. One is fueled by excitement and big plans. The other is fueled by structure and process. Fast forward a year. One of them will likely have a folder full of ideas. The other will have results. Why? Because results are rarely the product of inspiration alone. They're almost always the product of a repeatable process, a way of doing things that doesn't depend on how good you feel today or how badly you want it tomorrow, but on a system that keeps you engaged through all of it. We're creatures of habit, whether we like it or not. The question isn't whether we have systems. The question is whether the systems we have are serving us or sabotaging us. Waking up and scrolling on your phone for 45 minutes before even getting out of bed, that's a system. Avoiding the gym because your bag's never packed or your schedule's never blocked, that's a system, too. It might be unconscious, but it's still a system. And the outcome it produces is perfectly aligned with the process it follows. So if you're not getting the results you want, don't just look at your goals, look at your systems. What are you doing consistently, even without realizing it? What routines are shaping your direction? What environments are reinforcing your behavior? You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your systems. And the best part is systems are built. You're not born with them. You design them. You tweak them. You refine them until they support the life you want, not the habits you're trying to escape. You start with something small and sustainable. You build momentum. You make it harder to fail than to succeed. And once that structure is in place, it becomes easier to show up because the decisions are already made for you. That's the brilliance of systems. They remove friction. Take any high performer and examine their daily life. You'll find systems everywhere. Athletes have training regimens. Writers have daily word count goals. CEOs have morning routines and team check-ins, not because they can't function without them, but because they don't want to waste energy deciding what to do every day. They've systematized the essentials so they can focus on what matters. And in doing so, they've created stability internally and externally. There's freedom in discipline. There's peace in knowing you don't have to wrestle with yourself every morning about whether you'll show up. You already know you will, because the system is in place. And that predictability becomes powerful. It creates space for deeper focus. It reduces anxiety. It increases confidence. Because now, instead of chasing consistency, you live it. But systems don't just stabilize productivity. They stabilize identity. They shape who you become. Every time you follow through on a system, you reinforce the belief, this is who I am. I'm someone who honors my commitments. I'm someone who doesn't negotiate with my standards. I'm someone who shows up even when it's inconvenient. And those small confirmations, repeated daily, build the foundation of self, respect, and trust. The opposite is also true. When we leave our routines to chance, when we rely on how we feel in the moment to dictate our behavior, we create instability. We get inconsistent results, which leads to frustration, which leads to more inaction. It becomes a cycle. And the only way out is not to hope we get motivated again, but to build a better system that doesn't require us to feel motivated in the first place. And here's where the misconception creeps in. People hear system and think rigidity. They think of routines that suck the life out of spontaneity. But that's not what effective systems are. The best systems don't restrict you, they free you. They remove the mental load of small decisions so you have the capacity to be creative, present, and intentional. Systems don't box you in. They build you up. Think of systems like scaffolding during construction. They're there to support you while you're building. They're not the final product. But without them, the whole thing collapses under the weight of unpredictability. A solid system allows you to grow with confidence, knowing that even when life gets turbulent, you're still supported by structure. It keeps you grounded when everything else feels shaky. And in today's world, where distractions are endless, information is overwhelming, and burnout is real, having a personal system might be one of the most underrated forms of resilience. It protects your time. It filters your focus. It prevents your energy from being hijacked by everyone else's urgency. And it allows you to build something meaningful even in the midst of noise. You don't need to overhaul your life to build better systems. Start simple. Define your non-negotiables. Build routines around your values. Track what matters. And most importantly, make it sustainable. A system you can stick to on your worst day is better than a perfect one you abandon after a week. That's how you create true stability, not through bursts of energy, but through repeatable patterns that serve you, not sabotage you. Eventually, you'll come to realize something profound. Success doesn't feel chaotic. It feels stable. It feels routine. It feels boring in the best way. Because when the system is solid, you're not constantly chasing the next spark. You're operating from a place of strength. And from that place, your best work begins. In a world obsessed with the next big thing, the next motivational quote, the next viral strategy, there's something quietly powerful about someone who just works their system day in and day out. No need for fanfare. No need for hype. Just consistency, just stability, just results. So the question is, what's your system? Not your goal, not your mood, your system, because that's what will show up when you don't feel like it. That's what will carry you when you're overwhelmed. That's what will create space for greatness, not once, but consistently. Build that, and you'll never have to rely on a good mood to move forward again. There's a dangerous narrative circulating in modern culture, the idea that we need to feel good in order to do good work. That the right mood, the right mindset, or the right energy is a requirement for meaningful action. And while it sounds comforting, it's a trap. Because if feeling good becomes the prerequisite, then every dip in your mood becomes a legitimate reason to delay, to avoid, or to give up. Let's be honest, it's easy to show up when the sun is shining, when you're rested, inspired, and everything's going your way. You don't need much convincing to put in the effort. You're already there. But what about the days when you're not? What about the days when you're tired, uninspired, overwhelmed, or anxious? If your performance, your discipline, your progress, if everything depends on being in a good mood, then what you're really saying is, I only show up when the conditions are perfect. And the world doesn't work like that. Growth doesn't work like that. Life rarely hands you perfect conditions. It hands you challenges. It hands you resistance. It hands you uncertainty. And if your foundation is built on something as fragile as emotion, it's going to crack the moment pressure shows up. A good mood is a gift. It's a spark. It can lift your performance, expand your creativity, and make you feel unstoppable. But it's not supposed to be the reason you act. It's supposed to enhance your actions, not determine them. If you're only working, leading, or committing when you're in the right headspace, you're surrendering control of your life to something that fluctuates by the hour. We don't need to demonize feelings to understand this. Emotions are important. They give us feedback. They point us toward our values. They help us connect with others and with ourselves. But feelings are not facts, and feelings are not strategies. You can honor how you feel without making those feelings your compass. The mistake many people make is believing that their mood is their identity. If I feel unmotivated, I must not care. If I feel uninspired, maybe this isn't right for me. But that's not true. Those are just stories we tell ourselves. The truth is you can be deeply committed and still have days where you feel completely disconnected. You can be passionate about your mission and still wake up dreading the work. That doesn't mean you're off track. That means you're human. What separates the people who build something meaningful from those who just dabble is not that they always feel like it. It's that they don't require the feeling to move forward. They've made the mission more important than the mood. They've built a foundation that doesn't crumble every time the emotional winds shift. Think about it like this. Imagine a pilot who only flies when the weather is perfect. What kind of reliability is that? What kind of trust does that build? Now imagine a pilot who has trained for turbulence, who has instruments to guide them even when the skies are cloudy, who has systems in place that keep the plane in the air regardless of the conditions. That's the kind of leader people follow. That's the kind of professional people respect. Not the one who disappears when it gets cloudy, but the one who keeps flying anyway. We often underestimate our capacity to act independently of how we feel. We assume that discomfort is a signal to stop, but discomfort is often just the byproduct of growth, and growth is almost never comfortable. So when we expect it to feel good all the time, we set ourselves up for disappointment. We mistake natural resistance for failure, and we retreat. But what if we saw mood as feedback, not instruction? What if we acknowledge the feeling without letting it steer the wheel? I feel tired today doesn't have to mean I can't do this. It can simply mean I'll go a little slower, but I'll still go. I feel discouraged doesn't mean I should quit. It can mean, let me reconnect with why I started. We don't have to obey every mood that shows up. We can coexist with it and still move forward. There's a freedom that comes when you stop needing to feel great all the time. You stop chasing the high. You stop fearing the lows. You just do the work. And in doing the work, something magical happens. Your mood often catches up. There's momentum in motion. You start acting first, and the feeling follows. You begin to realize that action isn't the result of motivation. It's the source of it. This shift is powerful because it changes your entire relationship with discipline. Discipline becomes less about force and more about trust. You trust yourself to act even when it's inconvenient. You trust yourself to keep your word even when you're not in the mood. And that trust is more energizing than any fleeting spark of inspiration. There's also something deeply grounding about knowing you don't need to wait for the right mood to do what matters. You stop wasting time trying to feel ready. You stop living reactively. You stop letting the emotional weather determine your internal climate, and you start building a kind of consistency that's rare, the kind of consistency that builds reputations, that creates progress, that changes lives. The truth is, most of your growth won't happen when you feel like it. It'll happen on the days you'd rather quit, the days you want to stay in bed, the days you question everything. Because those are the days you get to prove to yourself that the mission matters more than the mood, that your purpose is real, that you're not just doing this because it's fun. You're doing this because it's right. People often ask, how do I become more consistent? And the answer is simple. Not easy, but simple. You stop depending on feelings and you start depending on decisions. You decide what matters. You commit to it and you follow through, not perfectly, but faithfully. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. When you operate from this place, your good mood becomes a bonus. It's the cherry on top. It's the extra spark that amplifies your work, not the foundation that justifies it. You're no longer at the mercy of your emotions. You're no longer chasing a temporary state of mind. You're building from principle, from clarity, from conviction. This doesn't mean you ignore your mental health. It doesn't mean you grind yourself into the ground. It means you create a deeper standard for yourself, one that honors your values more than your temporary state, one that allows you to take breaks without breaking your word, one that gives you room to be human and room to grow. Because when the mood fades, and it will, what remains? That's the real question. If all your progress is tied to a temporary feeling, you'll live in cycles. Start, stop, high, low, all in, all out. But if your progress is tied to a deeper commitment, a clearer structure, a stronger system, you create rhythm. You create momentum. And that creates real change. You're allowed to have bad days. You're allowed to feel low, but don't make those emotions the cornerstone of your strategy. Let your values be the compass. Let your vision be the engine. Let your discipline be the driver, because while emotions fluctuate, values endure. And if you can build your actions around what lasts, you won't have to rely on what fades. So yes, celebrate the good moods. Leverage them when they show up. Let them elevate your work, but don't build your foundation on them. Build your foundation on something stronger, something that stays standing when the mood disappears. Because when your strategy no longer depends on how you feel, you become unstoppable. There's this common belief that before you take action, you have to feel ready. That motivation is the ignition switch. Once you're inspired, once you're fired up, then you act. It's a belief that's been passed around so many times, it's practically law. Wait until you're motivated. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. If you wait for motivation, you're already too late. Motivation is unreliable. It's a burst of energy. It's an emotional high. And like every emotional high, it fades. It's not designed to be permanent. It spikes when something excites you, a new goal, a new challenge, a new chapter. And then just like that, it disappears when the work becomes difficult, inconvenient, or slow. If you've built your entire strategy around being motivated, you're not building anything sustainable. You're building a mood swing. We've all done it. We've made plans at our peak. I'm going to change everything. I'll wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, launch a business, write a book. In the moment, it feels real. But by the time the alarm clock rings the next morning, something's changed, the energy is gone, the story starts. Maybe not today. I need more time. Let me wait until I feel it again. And just like that, the momentum dies, not because the goal was wrong, but because the strategy was based on a feeling. But here's the thing. People who succeed don't have more motivation. They just stop waiting for it. They act without it. They understand something most don't, that action creates motivation. They don't sit around waiting to feel like it. They move, and that movement generates clarity, energy, and progress. It's not about feeling ready. It's about acting ready even when you're not. Waiting is comfortable. It gives us the illusion that we're being thoughtful, responsible, strategic. But often, waiting is just fear dressed up as preparation. It's the lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of beginning. We tell ourselves, I'm not motivated enough. But what we really mean is, I'm afraid to start. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid I won't be good enough. And so we stall, sometimes for days, sometimes for years. But fear doesn't shrink with time, it shrinks with action. The more you move forward, the smaller your excuses become. And the longer you wait, the stronger those excuses grow. Because inaction feeds doubt. And doubt, when left unchecked, will convince you that the dream was never yours to begin with. That's how dreams die, not in one big moment, but in 1,000 tiny delays. The truth is, you don't need to feel like it. You need to start. You need to train your brain to understand that feelings don't lead. They follow. You don't feel confident before you act. You act, and that builds confidence. You don't feel inspired before you create. You create, and that breeds inspiration. The cycle starts with action, not emotion. This is why discipline matters. Discipline is what shows up when motivation doesn't. Discipline is what says, this matters, even if I don't feel it today. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask how you feel. It just reminds you of what you said you'd do. And when you build a life around discipline instead of moods, you gain something powerful, momentum. Momentum is what separates people who finish from people who fantasize. It's not about having perfect days. It's about building consistent ones. You might not feel 10 out of 10 every morning, but if you keep showing up day after day, the momentum builds. And that momentum turns into identity. You stop being someone who waits and become someone who moves. But in our culture, we've glorified motivation. We've turned it into a personality trait. We look at people who consistently perform and think they're just more motivated than I am, as if they wake up every morning feeling inspired, energized, and ready to conquer the world. But that's not true. They wake up tired. They wake up distracted. They wake up unmotivated. The difference is they get up anyway. That's the hidden cost of waiting. Every time you delay, you train your brain that the feeling must come first. That comfort is a requirement. That hesitation is wisdom. But that's not wisdom, that's avoidance. And every time you avoid the hard thing, you reinforce the idea that you can't handle it. Over time, your confidence erodes, not because you failed, but because you never gave yourself a chance to begin. Think about how many dreams have died at the starting line, not because people weren't capable, but because they convinced themselves they needed to feel something more before they started. More clarity, more confidence, more energy. But clarity comes from doing. Confidence comes from repetition. Energy comes from motion. If you want more, you have to move first. This is the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs wait to feel inspired. Professionals work through the dull moments. They understand that mastery isn't built on hype. It's built on showing up on quiet mornings, on hard days, on rainy Tuesdays when no one's watching. Professionals don't romanticize the process. They respect it. And that respect leads to results. The people you admire, the ones who are doing what you wish you could do, they've just embraced discomfort faster than you. That's all. They've stopped waiting. They've decided that the cost of inaction is greater than the pain of discipline. And so they move even when it's messy, even when it's inconvenient, even when they're scared. And here's what happens when you do that. You stop being a victim of your moods. You take back control. You begin to see that your potential isn't dictated by how you feel today. It's dictated by what you do today. And that shift from emotion to execution changes everything. If you've been waiting, you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're just caught in a belief system that's failed you. The belief that motivation is the starting point. It's not. The starting point is commitment. The starting point is courage. The starting point is action. And when you act, you give yourself access to everything you thought you had to wait for. So don't wait, not for inspiration, not for certainty, not for motivation. Because the longer you wait, the louder the doubt gets, the heavier the fear becomes, the harder it is to remember why you started in the first place. Start now. Start small. Start scared. But start. Because the danger of waiting for motivation isn't just delay, it's the slow death of your potential. And you are not here to let your potential die in the waiting room. You are here to act, to build, to lead. Not just when you feel like it, but especially when you don't. There's a reason most people don't finish what they start. It's not lack of talent. It's not lack of ambition. It's emotional dependence. A subtle but dangerous reliance on feeling a certain way in order to act a certain way. It sounds innocent on the surface, wanting to feel inspired, confident, calm, energized. But when those feelings become a requirement, not a bonus, they turn into a barrier. Because when we become emotionally dependent, we unintentionally teach ourselves that we need permission from our emotions to move forward. And when those emotions don't show up, neither do we. We stop showing up to the work. We stop pushing through the discomfort. We stop doing the very things that would have created growth. Emotional dependence convinces us that our inner state must always be just right before we can move, and it's a lie. Real progress, real leadership, real transformation, it doesn't come from a life where everything feels perfectly aligned. It comes from learning how to operate when things aren't, when the circumstances are messy, when the emotions are turbulent, when the motivation is gone, when the pressure is high. That's where emotional resilience is born. And that's what separates those who endure from those who escape. Emotional resilience isn't about pretending you're okay when you're not. It's not about forcing yourself to smile or grinding through pain without acknowledgement. It's about building the capacity to feel everything, the uncertainty, the doubt, the fear, and still choose to move forward. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. Because you've chosen to root your identity in something deeper than comfort. We've been conditioned to avoid discomfort, to seek relief when things get hard, to numb, to pause, to delay, and in doing so, we've accidentally become emotionally fragile. One bad day can throw off our week. One piece of criticism can stop us in our tracks. One bout of self-doubt can convince us that we're not cut out for the thing we deeply want. That's emotional dependence. The inability to stay grounded unless the feelings are favorable. But feelings are never permanent. They are guests. They come, they stay for a while, and then they leave. And if we give them the keys to our decisions, they will run our lives in circles. One day you're on fire. The next you're questioning everything. One day you're unstoppable, the next you're hiding from your own goals. And what's tragic is that none of this is because you're incapable. It's because you never built the muscle to withstand the storm. Resilience is a muscle. It's built through resistance. You can't develop emotional resilience in theory. You build it in the moments you want to quit but don't. In the conversations you're scared to have but still do. In the days you feel empty but still show up with integrity. That's when resilience is formed. Quietly, privately, and powerfully. We talk a lot about grit, about hustle, but very few talk about the emotional side of it, the part that hurts, confuses, and tests you. Because growth always has an emotional tax. It's not just physical exhaustion, it's emotional friction. It's asking yourself, am I good enough? Why is this taking so long? What if I fail publicly? These questions live in the minds of every ambitious person. The difference isn't who hears them. The difference is who keeps going anyway. That's the power of emotional resilience. It doesn't silence the doubt, it outlasts it. It doesn't eliminate fear, it walks with it. It doesn't promise clarity. It moves with conviction anyway. Emotional resilience is the quiet voice that says, even if today is heavy, I'm not going anywhere, I'll carry this and keep going. Compare that to emotional dependence, where the moment something feels off, we retreat, we scroll, we distract, we talk ourselves out of trying, and what's dangerous is how justifiable it sounds. I'm just not in the right headspace. I don't want to burn out. I need more time. But sometimes what we really need is less escape and more endurance. Not the toxic kind of endurance that pretends everything is fine, but the kind that recognizes this is hard and I can still do hard things. Emotional resilience is not an inborn trait. It's a habit. It's the result of training yourself to face discomfort, not flee from it. It's built every time you acknowledge your feelings without becoming enslaved by them. Every time you sit with frustration and keep doing the work anyway. Every time you get knocked down and choose to rise again and again. And here's what's beautiful. The more you practice resilience, the more trust you build with yourself. Not because you always win, but because you always return. You become someone you can count on. Someone who doesn't disappear when it gets dark. Someone who honors the mission more than the mood. There's something unshakable about that kind of person. Not loud, not flashy, but strong, rooted, reliable. And that kind of strength can't be taught in a classroom or bought in a course. It's earned in silence, in repetition, in showing up with heart on the days when it would be easier to hide. If you think of the people who've inspired you the most, the ones whose stories moved you, whose journeys stayed with you, they weren't the ones who never struggled. They were the ones who struggled and kept going. The ones who showed up in the midst of chaos. The ones who cried but didn't quit. That's emotional resilience. It's not about being invulnerable. It's about being willing to keep showing up, even while healing. In a world full of noise, instant gratification, and surface-level validation, resilience is a rare and rebellious act. It's choosing depth over speed, integrity over impression, commitment over comfort. And most people won't choose it not because they don't want to, but because they've never been taught how. We've been sold the myth that we need to feel strong before we act strong. But it's the reverse. You act strong, and then the strength shows up. You walk into the unknown, and then the courage grows. You show up while still doubting yourself, and then the confidence builds. That's resilience. It's not always glamorous, but it's always powerful. And if we're honest, the life we want is on the other side of that kind of resilience. The relationships we want, the careers we want, the impact we want. All of it lies beyond the line of emotional comfort. And we don't get there by chasing better moods. We get there by choosing better responses. You don't need to fake happiness. You don't need to pretend everything's okay. But you do need to stop waiting for everything to feel okay before you take action. Because if you wait to feel perfect, you'll never move, you'll never lead, you'll never build. You'll just delay, excuse, and numb. You don't build legacy from emotional highs. You build it from emotional strength. The kind that rises in the quiet moments, the painful ones, the uncertain ones, the kind that whispers, "This is hard, but not harder than my purpose." So if you feel tired, uncertain, or discouraged, that's okay, that's normal, that's human. Just don't become dependent on feeling better before you get better. Don't wait to feel fearless before you take the step. Let the action be your teacher. Let the commitment carry you through the emotional fog, because emotional resilience doesn't just help you get through today. It builds the foundation for who you become tomorrow. And who you become tomorrow depends on what you do today, not how you feel about it.